Happy New Year, Crime Besties. Welcome back to our first episode of 2025.
Yes, Happy New Year. Oh, that's really weird, isn't it? We're back.
We're back after a little break. We've had I'm sure we're recording this a little bit in advance, but I'm hoping we're having a really lovely Christmas break at the moment.
Enjoying the time with our children.
Yay. Oh, look, the one thing I absolutely adore about holidays is not having to make lunchboxes, although you're a bit of a snack bitch for the entire time.
Yeah, well, that's why I've got my snack drawer. I allow access to over the holidays. I just limit like what I put in it.
Yep.
And then you go
So
for
as
it.
in, do you just put like a day's worth of snacks into the drawer and then replenish it daily?
Yeah, sometimes I just stock it, like kind of thing, but with snacks that I'm okay with them eating.
Okay.
And other times, if it's getting out of hand, I'll pull back.
Okay.
And only have certain amounts. But my kids are pretty good at not overeating. But what I also have in the drawer is bowls, like little plastic bowls, and the expectation is that anything in there that's larger gets, portioned into a little bowl. So they've got everything they need, cups, everything in that drawer.
Love it.
They should not need to be in any other cupboard.
Do you find them ever in any other cupboard?
Of course I do.
Yeah. They're like, where are the good snacks? Mum's holding out on us again.
Oh, they'll never find that hidey hole.
As they shouldn't. As they shouldn't. I thought we'd kick off this episode by having a bit of a chat about what your word for 2024 was and what your word for 2025 is going to be.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready for it?
All right.
I gave you like literally about an hour heads up that I was going to ask you this question. So
Yeah.
Go.
I think, such contradictions probably. So my word for 2024 is mullet. Because it's driven me nuts, I reckon, for a full 12 months.
Okay.
And now we're here.
Yep.
So,
he's now got a fully fledged mullet. So it took all year.
I want to vomit. It's taken all year because we've gone from me adamantly. I was the parent who was like, I draw the line at a mullet. You can choose for whatever you like to do with your hair. It grows back. But I draw the line at a mullet. My child is never having a mullet.
And yet,
here we are. Today's
last
the day.
Last night, the child got a mullet.
Well, he's been building this for a long time, and it's been getting longer and longer. Absolutely. And God, my kids have a lot of hair. Shock horror. And so it's been growing and getting buffier and buffier. And I'm like, this needs taming. So we did go and get haircuts last night. He bawled his eyes out in the car on the way there, telling me no one's cutting my hair, because he was really happy with it just growing. Oh. But it was looking so bad. So I made him go in and saying to him, the hairdressers, they're the professionals. They know what to do. They'll shape it. We're not taking length. They'll shape it. We walked in and there was a guy, and look, he's lovely, this hairdresser. Barber. He's a really lovely young guy, and he's got this haircut. And Brody just went, that's what I want. Oh. So the young guy who then cut it, he just went, I want what Luke's got.
That's actually really cute.
It was really sweet. But the whole thing was, I want what Luke's got, but with my length.
Yeah.
And so it was
from the front, he looks adorable. He looks so gorgeous.
And there's the party in the back.
Oh, isn't it though? And like this morning at school, I had to like run my fingers through it because it's just so thick. Oh, I did. Oh, there was no holding back. It's so thick and glorious. And it's not on my child. So there's that. Yep. Yeah,
man.
My youngest, so Brody, who's Brody's best friend, Lucas, he's like very much about the short back and sides. He likes to look like Cristiano Ronaldo, who's very well kept. Love that.
Yes.
I saw a meme.
Great role model.
Yeah, my older boy though is like Brody. Like he looks like an alpaca. Yeah. And I saw this meme recently going around. Basically, it's like mums of boys who had haircuts like this, and it was a photo of like really nicely cut hair, really beautifully styled, short back and sides and whatever, will inevitably end up with a boy looking like this, and it was the alpaca hairstyle, and I'm like, literally, I could insert photos of Oliver for both of those. Yeah. So I get it. I get that there's no control because they are their own people and it is just hair, and at some point you've got to let go, but oh my God.
Because even like the sides of Brody's where because it's this fade thing or whatever, and as I'm like, so we're good, you know what you're doing? Great. Okay, I'm walking away because I'm like leaving him to it, and the barber turned to me and goes, so we're going right down to 0, are we? Like on the sides there? And I was like, oh, wait, what? I don't even know. Like,
Just whatever. I mean,
whatever.
there's no
It grows
coming back from this at this point.
this is it. I mean, God, the zero is not my concern really after the fact of it.
Exactly.
God.
All right.
So, yeah, definitely this year has been, it's the talk of the mullet.
A mullet of the year.
Exactly.
A mullet of a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about yours?
My word of 2024 is complex. I just feel like there've been a lot of complex situations this year and a lot of things that I've been working through and like realizing, and I think it's because I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And this year, 2025,
You are getting old.
I know,
yeah.
I'm really old. This year in 2025, I'm turning 40. And I think, like, you know, when you're coming up for a milestone, anything, it makes you reflect, obviously, on where you're at and what you're doing and where you want to go.
Do I want to turn this age? Is this going to be
I'm
a
cool
positive thing? Yeah,
I'm cool for turning 40.
Yeah,
Like,
I think 40 is the new, like, 20.
Yeah,
Come on.
totally. I'm cool for it. But I've just been reflecting a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of complexities in life that I want to simplify next year or this year in 2025. And I just want, my word for 2025 is actually joy. I want to do things that bring me joy.
Yep.
Like doing this podcast, you know, every week. We're committed to it. We're doing it. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
But also like choosing joy in situations that I probably wouldn't ordinarily have otherwise. Like I've always been one of these people who I choose like the responsible thing to do all the time and the right thing to do. And I'm very much a people pleaser. I like to make sure everyone around me is, you know, accommodated.
Yeah.
Which is great. I like that about myself in some ways.
Yes.
But I want to do
But
it
you need to
only
enjoy
in
things.
That's right.
Yeah.
I only want to do that in situations that also serves me.
Yes.
I know this sounds really selfish, but
No.
40 is going to be my year of me. And so I want to be like, yeah, I want that to be my focus for this year.
Love that.
Happy to do all my things, but as long as it brings me joy.
Yeah. And learn how to say no.
I am slowly learning how to say no. I feel like I've done really well over the Christmas period because normally I find I get so burnt out. And, you know, when people go like, oh, let's catch up for this, let's do this, how about we fit in this? And I just feel like I'm always like, yes. You get to Christmas and you can't enjoy it because you're so burnt out.
Yeah.
I feel like this year I've really done well. Like I've chosen not to go to certain events that I would have 100% gone to in the past.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's actually been a much nicer period. And for the kids as well, like we've been around home a lot more than we probably ordinarily would have. And it's just been nice.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. And spending time together, that's like literally the most important thing.
So is. Yeah.
So slightly on a slightly different tangent to yours. But tell me what your word of 2025
because my 2025 word is probably on a similar level of like, you know, that it's very different to mullet. But organisation. I want to be far more organised. I feel like my life has shifted these last few years and I feel like I'm still trying to find my feet of my new norm of like just general organisation of how I manage myself. So work and in family life both.
Okay.
Like I feel like I'm in a position in my work that I know what I'm doing enough that I should be more organised instead of flying by the seat of my pants all the time, which I tend to do. And then in my home life as well though, like I just feel like things get out of control and I shouldn't let it when I could just be more organised. And in that, being more organised, I can then actually do more for myself.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I feel like I'm constantly just taking care of other things rather than me and doing the things that I need to do for myself, not the things maybe I want to do because it's about the need to. Because, it's a need to, you know, eat better, you know, be more organised in managing those things, getting time to go for a walk, things like that I just am not fitting in at the moment because life's getting in the way.
Yeah.
When a simple organisation could fix it.
I mean, you've got the concepts there, like you've got your snack drawer and all those kinds of things. Like that's
Making my
great
life
organisation.
easier.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but that's a simple, like, because that's so entrenched in me of like how I do my shopping. Like I literally unpack my groceries to that, you know, like, so that's, but I want more of that in my life.
You got this, girl.
Yeah.
Love that.
We'll make 2025 the year, won't we?
The year. Yeah, it is.
Well, this podcast's going to blow up. We're going to quit our jobs.
Imagine that. Okay, first episode of 2025. Imagine if by the end of this year, oh, that would be amazing.
That would.
We need to get like...
Subscribe, people. Subscribe.
Look, we're not quitting anytime soon. So let's hope. Let's hope for it. It's always been the goal.
And it will continue. Yeah. I love it.
So what are we talking about today?
All right. So today's case is it's a big one. It's a very interesting one. We're talking about Keli Lane and her baby Tegan Lane. So this is a huge case from back in the 90s. And so people might have heard of Keli Lane. They might have heard of Tegan. But I feel like it's one of those ones where you might not know that straight away. Once we start getting into it and you go, oh, I remember this happening. It was in the media and things like that. If you're from Australia, outside of Australia, probably have no idea of this case. So it's very interesting.
Although I did listen to a podcast from some UK-based podcasters who were sort of getting the story out there. So I think because it is such a complex and there's that word, a complex and interesting story. Yeah. And there's so much nuance to it.
Oh God, yeah.
Just really quickly, earlier in the week, Meg and I were having a chat about the way we felt about this. And I think we've got slightly differing opinions as to what's happened. Well, to what we believe. But it'll be interesting to see as we go along, because in this you can find people who are absolutely for one way and the way one thing happened, and you can find the absolute opposite. So depending on, I guess, what you've listened to, what you've researched, can help form those opinions.
How you interpret things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, there's a missing baby, a missing child, a woman who would be in her 20s to this day if she were found. So, you know, there's a lot.
How old would Tegan be now? Is it about
24? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. That's insane. So there could be someone out there in living anywhere in the world that could be the person we're looking for. In this, we don't know that.
We don't know. And this is the thing that makes it so tricky.
Yeah.
So tricky. All right. Keli Lane was born on the 21st of March in 1975. So she's almost 50, I think.
Yeah, she's 49. Yeah.
49.
Yeah.
Her parents, Sandra and Robert Lane, were very well-respected members of the community. So Keli was born in Manly in Sydney. And, you know, we know Manly and we know that area, you know, really well as true crime aficionados, because this is the same setting that The Teacher's Pet was set in. So it's in that Insular Peninsula.
It's that, but it's also like a similar time. It's, you know, it's not far off of the timeline of that going on.
Off. It's not far off.
Yeah. And in researching this, the lifestyle of what was happening around that Insular Peninsula, Keli Lane was certainly, I think, mixed up in that.
Absolutely. Like what you're referring to, I think, is like these older men preying on younger women. And we know that, like in the case of Chris Dawson, he was a school teacher in that area and he was having relationships with his students. And similarly, so Keli Lane was a water polo player, and she says readily there were like 30-year-old men dating 16-year-old women from the water polo club, and you just think, what the hell? Like,
I mean,
but this was normal. Like, it wasn't just like a one-off salacious
This is the thing. You sort of listen to the Teacher's Pet, and you can sort of go, oh, there was these two men, you know, as being the twins or the Dawson twins, you know, that were doing this, you know, and being involved in this. But then you realize when you look at this case, it was far bigger than just the two of them.
It was like a culture.
It was a culture
on the northern beaches of Sydney,
which is so scary.
Gross.
I really find it really horrible. And the fact that again, with this one, it's the adults in this situation have dropped the ball in that whole area. These young girls were being exploited. It just, really blows my mind getting into this, realising that across the board in that area was some whole lot of not good stuff going on.
For sure. So Kelly's dad, Robert, was a police officer at Manly Police Station, and her mum was a hospital worker. I'm not quite sure exactly what she did there. I don't think she was a nurse or part of the medical staff.
Right.
But she held some job at the hospital.
We need to come
Manly
back to
Hospital.
her.
Pardon?
We will come back to her.
Oh, my God. I can't wait, actually, to get into that with you.
Me too.
So Keli was a really sporty child, and I think the family really placed a huge amount of value on sporting achievements and achievements in general. Keli wasn't a stellar academic, but she did well at school.
Yep.
And she was very well liked. She was really popular. As I said, she was a water polo player. She was involved in at quite a high level in the sport, like in state teams, and she even made a junior national team at one point.
Yep.
There was some suggestion that potentially at some point she might even be able to make an Olympic team, even though there's conjecture around that.
Basically, in generally, people what were saying about her was that she was a naturally gifted, talented athlete. It was whether or not her ambition was there or not.
Well,
was all that drew her.
From what I've seen, one of her coaches describes her as she had the grit and determination to do it.
Yeah.
She didn't really have the natural talent as a water polo player, but she wanted to get there.
Yeah.
Then one of her friends says, and I think this is completely fair, if she really wanted to be an elite athlete, she wouldn't be out drinking. Yeah. She wouldn't be out partying every weekend. Yeah. She could have actually probably, had she focused solely on that, she probably could have made it because she did have that natural innate ability.
There was natural ability there. She just wasn't one that was cultivating it in herself because there was other draw cards that were more important to her.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. We make our choices.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure that out there, not just because you have the ability to be good at something doesn't mean that that's your passion.
Yeah, but I think there was a massive expectation from her parents that she would achieve in the sporting arena.
Yeah, and the family were very well known in the area. Just in general, as a community, they were obviously people who participated in the community. They were on the committees of the surf club. They were on the committees and and managers of water polo teams. They weren't a family who went, oh yeah, go along and do your sport. They participated. Which
I think the dad, Robert, was quite high up as a rugby coach in the area.
Yeah, he was well respected in rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So, they were involved in a lot of different things.
Yeah, they had, community and people knew who the Lane family were.
And they even say it in interviews.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we had a certain social standing. We had a certain reputation to uphold.
Yeah. Yep.
So
interesting.
It is. Look, the family dynamics here, we will get into this as the story goes along, but it is unbelievable. And you just can't believe that a family could function like this. I mean, at the surface level, yes, they were a functioning family. They were, pillars of the community. But then you dig that one little layer, scratch that surface a little bit.
Oh, only a little bit too, yeah.
And you're like, fuck, they were fucked. They were so dysfunctional.
Yeah. I mean, I heard one sort of talk of a psychologist sort of saying that in the household, Keli had been raised as a human being, not a girl. So there was just there was never any talk around. I mean, little girls need conversations with their mum or their dad, whoever it is that can be in their life, talking about changes in your body and things like that, because that's important to have those conversations. Those sorts of emotional conversations never took place. Mm-mm. So she grew up she was raised as a tomboy as much as possible you could be raised as a tomboy, so I don't think there was ever any emotional conversations happening in that house.
I also, in something that I've either read or listened to, there was talk that, her mum never had a chat with her about periods or reproductive health or anything like that. And
look, plenty of parents aren't good at that. I mean, I can vouch that my mum wasn't great. But with still enough, kind of thing.
Yeah, so you weren't shocked when this happened to you.
Yeah, but I think it was a whole nother level of that, of that
fully.
I don't know how to talk about that with her, so we just won't talk about it. I really get that sense that there was
So then you
nothing.
think of Keli as a young teenager going through that. That'd be very isolating. And to not be able to talk to your mum about it, that's hard.
That's hard, yeah.
And I guess if she's grown up to be sort of quite insular, is she then talking to her friends about it? I've got friends who I grew up with who never talked about periods, never talked about changes to their bodies. And then on the other hand, I've got friends who talk about it all the time.
Yes.
So I guess that depends, the way you were raised and the way that whether this was a taboo thing in your household or not, whether it was something you talked about or not.
Yeah.
It's really
interesting.
This just sort of builds a little bit more about what
a picture
what
of who she is and how she grew up. Yeah, because it certainly impacts, I think, who she became as an adult. Well, not necessarily even adulthood when these things started for her.
No.
Really?
No. So according to Sandra and Robert, their family values were respect for others, honesty. We'll get back to that. And they were sort of the mottos that the family lived by.
Yeah. Yeah.
But did they?
No. Well, yeah. Well, I think it was like, we have a standing in the, they wanted to portray an image to others of how their family was. But I think at home, there wasn't any communication.
Yeah.
Beyond how other people perceived them.
Yeah. They were successful in doing that because everyone who knew them superficially was like, oh, yeah, they were great. They, wonderful people. They did a lot for the community.
Yeah.
Keli also had a brother.
Yeah.
So it was a family unit of 4 people.
Yeah.
In 1992, do we start the timeline?
Let's get to the timeline. Yeah.
Because I think otherwise this episode's going to go on for... I mean, it's going to go on forever anyway. In November of 1992, Keli falls pregnant with her first child. She was 17 years old at the time, and she fell pregnant to her boyfriend, like a childhood sweetheart named Aaron Tyack. I think he pronounced his surname.
Yeah, you've done well.
She tells him about this pregnancy, so she obviously figures out that she's pregnant and that all of this is going on, and she tells him about it, and they decide mutually that she's going to have a termination.
Yeah.
Now, according to him, he drove her to the Manly dock.
Yeah.
She caught the ferry over to Sydney to have the termination at a clinic, and he waited for her
to come back.
And when she came back, he describes her as being broken.
Yeah.
So
I wonder why he didn't go, but I guess it is, the 90s.
They were 17.
Yeah. I mean, to deal with that on your own, that's huge.
I just feel for her.
Absolutely.
Imagine her being in that situation.
Yeah.
She hasn't told a soul aside from Aaron.
And they were both in year 12. I believe they were still finishing school. So, I mean, wasn't good timing for that to happen.
Absolutely
and you can understand the decision they made, but geez, they needed more support to go through all that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And neither of them told a soul. There was a documentary released by the ABC called Exposed, the Keli Lane story. And it was produced by Caro Meldrum Hanna, who is an amazing journalist. She's most famous for reporting for Four Corners.
Yeah.
And she this 3-part documentary, I suppose, is very interesting.
Yeah.
But she interviews Aaron as part of it.
Yeah.
In the earlier episodes especially. And he seems like a really lovely guy.
Yeah.
Like he's just a very simple man.
Yeah.
And he gets quite emotional recalling the events and how it all came about. And it still affects him to this day, which it would.
Yep. Yeah. So, I'm sure there's unfortunately lots of girls that have been through that and lots of boys that, that have been together with somebody and that's happened and they've gone through that together.
Yeah.
So, it's not uncommon, but at the same time, it would have just been a really tough thing and it was clear he felt that she was very emotional about it. He was clearly emotional about it, but they made
the right decision for them at the time.
Yeah.
Yep. I fully agree. In mid-1994, Keli falls pregnant again for the second time.
Yeah.
This time it was allegedly she was having an affair with a married man. Now, I don't know. I've seen different things reported about whether that's true, but I think that's the most commonly accepted version of events.
Yeah.
And they decide again mutually that she's going to terminate that pregnancy.
She did fess up. I didn't think she even told him.
Oh, didn't she?
No, that was my understanding. He didn't even know, but I might be wrong.
Oh, sorry. No, I've literally got that written down. She didn't tell him. I'm really sorry. She told nobody, literally nobody for this pregnancy. So she'd just broken up with Aaron when she fell pregnant.
Yeah. She had low overlaps of who she was sleeping with and things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think she actually fully knew who the father would have been.
Okay.
From what I could gather.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a late term abortion at 20 weeks gestation. So
that's a completely different procedure to the first one, that what she had to go through. So, and from her account of that, it was pretty horrific.
It was a 2-step process, overnight in hospital. They had to put insert a dilator.
Yeah.
It just sounded horrific the way she describes it. But at 20 weeks, you're halfway through a pregnancy. The the fetus is, really far developed, really. I mean, I think viability these days for a fetus is 20
weeks off.
I was going to say, I think it's 22 weeks. It's either 22 or 24. Either way, really close to viability.
Yeah.
So, it would have been such a traumatic thing for her to go through, but why did she wait until she was 20 weeks?
That's really, well, she says she didn't know she was pregnant. And look, there's a few things with that I can understand. As an athlete, she skipped periods. So, okay, you're not going to know that you haven't had a period and therefore you might be pregnant.
Yeah.
Completely understand that. But if she was taking the pill regularly enough and properly, she probably wouldn't have fallen pregnant. But again, I know plenty of people who have.
She admits though that she wasn't taking the pill regularly. She was drinking a lot,
so that could,
and so it potentially renders it ineffective.
Effective, yeah.
So she actually wasn't compliant in terms of taking the pill. So what do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah.
Because apparently the other thing is, like, back in the day, especially in this scene, the men were like, "Oh no, we don't wear condoms."
Fucking hell. Yep, they don't have any responsibility.
Oh, no. Why would they?
Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, why she let it go that late, I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
It's a very, very interesting
But again,
one.
she did not tell anybody about this pregnancy. She never told her mum, never told a friend anything.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah, had her late. But the awful thing with it too, I think she actually went to one clinic where she'd gone to the last time to have the abortion. She went to the same clinic. They turned her away and said, "We can't do it because it's because you're so far along." They referred her to another clinic to go and have the abortion. So, she had to go and seek this out and find all this stuff out for herself. She had no idea how to do this and found her way around all those things and worked it out all by herself, which is, I mean, that's awful.
Yeah. How old is she at that point? 18.
18. Yeah. Yep. So, yes, then we get to
early 1995.
95. So this time again, she falls pregnant again. This time, though, she carries the baby full term. So she organised for this baby to be adopted. She didn't tell the father about it at all.
Nope.
She didn't tell anyone about this pregnancy. No. So this is where it gets really interesting with her pregnancies. So she had a boyfriend at the time. Mm-hmm. So they were having...
Duncan Gillies, his name is. His name will keep coming up throughout this. So he was a rugby player. They were both sort of really amazing athletes, and they were like the golden couple kind of thing.
Yeah. So she carried this baby full term, dating him, obviously sleeping with him, potentially sleeping with other people as well.
She was definitely sleeping with other people
because he wasn't the father.
We know he's not the father.
Yeah. So this little baby was obviously carried to full term with him, with her boyfriend not knowing at all that she's 9 months pregnant.
Okay, so they asked him about this at the inquest, right? And they were like, "How did you know? Like, were you sexually active throughout this time?" Yes, we were. Yeah. She'd stay over 3 or 4 nights a week, and we were intimate multiple times a week during that time. The way he describes it is very funny. But, I mean, it sort of takes you back to that, like, how funny. But they would have sex in a spooning position, and he wasn't allowed to touch her stomach because she was self-conscious that she'd put on weight. Yes, you'd put on weight because you were fucking nearly 9 months pregnant at this point.
Yeah.
I can't buy the fact that he didn't know. I think he just was convenient for him to not say anything and not do anything. And for
none of my business. What?
Could have very easily been your baby. It wasn't.
No.
But it could have. How was he to know that?
Yeah.
He wasn't.
And to think that no one, that he didn't go think to say to her, "Hey, do you think maybe you might be pregnant?"
Yeah. So during this time, her water polo team was doing really well, and they actually made the grand final of the state-based competition, I think.
Yeah.
They won it.
Yeah.
And then that night they decided to go out for drinks.
Yes.
Now, at this point, Keli was 9 months pregnant.
Yep.
She just played...
But on that too, she's played a grand final in water polo. Now, water polo is an incredibly physical game. And I don't mean just in terms of what she needs, how physical she needs to be. I mean, there is scratching, pulling. They come out of those pools without bathers on because they rip them. They gouge, they kick really hard. Have you ever played water polo?
Oh, never. No.
Oh, yeah, I've played. We used to play all the time at school. And, oh, my God, that people kick you under the water, like in the stomach, because then you're like, oh God, swallowing water while someone else is grabbing the ball off you. So that's how you play.
It sounds diabolical.
It is awful. It was like torture.
Yeah.
My dad played very high level water polo. He'll tell you stories about what they would do for the men when they kick you.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it is a very physical game.
Yeah.
And she's 9 months pregnant.
So in the Exposed documentary, they question the coaches and the staff, like the team manager and her teammates. So there's only one teammate that actually spoke out in the documentary.
They all shut down and don't want to talk.
Closed ranks and didn't want to talk about it. But they're like, how did you not see? She's in a bathing suit.
They all knew.
They all knew.
They were all talking about it.
Absolutely. But no one actually talked to Keli about it. They were talking about it behind her back. Even the team manager, the adults, the coach denies that he knew. I'm like, I don't.
Alongside her mother, who was the manager of the team.
Not at the time. It was another lady who was the manager at the time. But her mum had been a manager of the team previously.
I think whilst one of her pregnancies too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't during this one. It was that other lady.
It was all the gossip going on behind the scene. They were all talking about it. Not one of those adults went, hey, this 19-year-old is pregnant and playing water polo. Should we not say something? And
well, she can't. She can't play water polo.
I'm all
it's
for
dangerous.
Like the fact that you don't say to a woman like, oh, congratulations, until you know they're pregnant. I'm that person who's like, until they tell me I'm pregnant, I don't say anything.
Peter has a rule, a life rule that he's like, unless I can see a baby coming out of that woman at that exact moment in time, I will never comment on whether she's pregnant or not.
I'm staunch. I'm staunch to that too. I mean, it's really hard to do that, but in a situation where she's being put into a physical encounter like that in a water polo game, and only 19. Someone should have said to her, look, love, let's just do a pregnancy test and check and see maybe if you're pregnant, because, we want to look after you.
Yeah.
No one wanted to look after her.
No.
That is what I find really hard.
Yeah, I agree. She tried to conceal her pregnancy by wrapping her towel around her and sitting on the edge of the pool and sliding into the pool, whereas apparently before she'd always dive in and would walk around in her bathers and not have a care in the world about that.
Well, there's all the teammates going under the water in their goggles, going, she's pregnant. Look, she's definitely pregnant.
But not actually going up to her and going, hey, you all right?
Yeah.
Because you haven't told anyone about it.
Yeah.
And do you need some help? Do you need...
I know to this day, that woman they did interview on that show, she says she regrets not saying anything. But I don't put it on the other 19-year-old girls, to be really honest. I mean, especially in that day and age. I think today kids would be more, at 19 would be more upfront with their friend.
Yeah.
But the adults should have been more protective.
100%.
They should have guilt, and they do have something to answer to on that, I reckon.
Yeah. So they've won this grand final. They've gone out to the pub. No, we've just gone off on the tangent, but that's fine. They've gone off to the pub having some drinks, and then everyone's like, oh, where's Keli? Kelly's normally there to stump.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Loves a drink, loves a party.
Yeah.
She's always there to the end for our international listeners. That means to the end of the night.
Yeah.
And she's disappeared at some point. Turns out she'd gone into labour.
Yeah.
And she took herself off to the King George V Hospital camper down in Sydney, and on her own, birthed a baby girl.
Yeah.
Now, in all of the court transcripts, they refer to this, so names are suppressed, but they refer to this child as TR. And so we can refer to her as that ongoing if we're mentioning her again.
Mm-hmm.
Keli hadn't put anything in place in terms of adoption arrangements or anything like that. So
she hadn't even had any prenatal care, which is, that's...
She had
it confirmed, but that was it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is all. She'd attended her GP, had the pregnancy confirmed, and then had not had any other appointments. Now, she was drinking throughout this time. She was participating in a very physical contact sport.
Yeah.
But anyway, this baby was born, and the process of adoption commenced once she was in hospital, because they were she asked to see an adoption agency when she was there.
Yeah.
Now, many years later, a psychiatrist assesses her, and she said that when Keli was in hospital with the baby before the adoption, or first of all, it was fostering, but then into adoption.
Well, yeah.
Before that kind of all took place, she breastfed this baby. She, had naps with the baby. She was caring for it, her. The baby was in with her in her room.
Yep.
And it was like the mother of any other child who is then going to be taking that child home.
Yeah, the notes really indicate, like a normal, new mother interacting with her baby and very caring, and so no signs of any issues. But yeah, wanted to adopt her out, which, at 19, no partner and not knowing, what was going on with all of that and who the father was, that's not unheard of. But yeah, so it seemed to them on the surface, I guess, a fairly normal situation in that. Other than the fact that she hadn't got any family or anyone coming to visit her with this new baby, there was no one clearly knew about her pregnancy.
But she told the hospital that her family were interstate.
That's
and that the father, and she was just visiting Sydney for
That's right.
3 weeks or something.
She gave her an address for Perth, didn't she? That she lived in Perth.
Yeah, and that the father of the child was based in Perth as well.
Yeah.
And that he wanted the child to be adopted, but that I think she said that he was living internationally actually. She said Duncan Gillies was the father of the child. That's the name that she gave, even though it has since been proven that he is not the biological father. It's just lie after lie after lie.
It took approximately about 14 months for them to finally process that adoption because of her lies, and also due to not being able to find the father, because you can't just adopt a child out. I mean, you've got to consider both parents, biological parents of this child. And so they wanted to try and contact the father to get his approval as well for the adoption. So it caused quite a number of issues for Keli at the time, trying to do that.
She'd give half truths as well. So she named Duncan Gillies.
Yeah.
Now, granted, she may have thought he was the father, I don't know. But she named him. And she gave them his phone number with 1 digit wrong.
Yeah.
She gave them an address that was fictitious.
Yeah.
She gave them an address.
An old address.
An old address that was instead of being 75A, it was 7A or something like that. So it was almost right.
Yeah. Yeah.
She just dropped a number or added a number or changed a number.
Yeah.
This was her pattern. This is what she did when she was fabricating these stories.
Yeah.
Now, eventually the child was adopted and, this is moving ahead quite a bit, but when this whole matter went to court, they were able to find and prove the paternity of this child. We don't know who that is. That person's name has been suppressed. We know that the child is well, the little girl is well, TR is well, and living with her adopted parents, and her life is grand.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice outcome to a really sort of rocky and weird start to life for that little girl.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop there.
No, by no means.
In early 1996, Keli begins her career as a teacher. So she's working at a private school, but while she's working in that capacity, she's also still competing at a fairly high level in water polo. Mm-hmm. And during this time, very early in 1996, she goes to the World Championships in Canada with her junior national team, and they receive a silver medal. So this was a World Championship type event, and they're looking at this stage of bringing water polo into the Sydney 2000 Olympics. So they're really sort of trying to garner women's water polo. They're trying to really garner a lot of interest around it. And I guess, I think we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but was that an aspiration of Keli's or not? I don't really know. But obviously it was a passion of hers. She's still continuing this through, when she's working full time and having other commitments. And she was actually coaching the water polo team at the school as well.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, what else happens in 1996?
Well, she falls pregnant again, doesn't she?
She does.
Yeah. So again,
she's in a relationship still at this time with Duncan Gillies.
Yeah. And
she, again, nobody knows that she's pregnant. She doesn't tell a soul, including Duncan.
Again.
They're still sleeping with each other.
A spoon.
Spooning. and, you know, having a really great time of it and not figuring out that she's actually up the duff again.
But again, it's all whispers. Everyone is talking about it in the water polo team. So they all know, but they don't say anything again.
Yep. Again.
Yep.
On the 12th of September in 1996, Keli gives birth to a daughter named Tegan at Auburn Hospital in Western Sydney. This is... I don't even know how to start to unpack this to explain it to people, but we'll go with her story.
Her story for now, and then we can come back, can't we?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So she gives birth to this baby daughter, and again, she nurtures the child. She breastfeeds the child. She's in hospital for 2 days.
Well, can we just go back one little step?
Sure.
Prior to her giving birth, she is... Again, she's never told anyone. So there's certain commitments she has that she has to fulfill to, I guess, continue her life as the way it is. One of those things being like there's a wedding coming up that she's, you know, her whole family's going to be obliged to be at. And so she knows this date of this wedding is looming and it's close to within weeks of sort of, I guess, her due date for this baby that no one knows about. But it's getting so close that she's like, I'm not going to be able to get to this wedding if I don't, or I'm going to be looking very pregnant maybe at this wedding. So she is pretty keen to get this baby out and sort of, I guess, done with. So she actually goes along to one hospital, to Ryde Hospital, and says that she's 38 weeks and I want to be induced.
I'm in terrible pain.
Yep.
My back's killing me. This has been a horrible pregnancy and I need to be induced.
I need to be induced. They wouldn't induce her.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
So the first thing is she was 38 weeks. There's no need for an induction. She was medically otherwise well.
And she'd also said this was her first pregnancy.
She said it was her first pregnancy.
Yeah.
And she also had no documentation for that hospital. So it's not like she was seeing an obstetrician there.
Yep,
they had no medical records for her. They were like, well, we need to do a lot more, you know, than just admit you and induce you given your 38 weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So she left, came back, tried again with them. Didn't work. They said, no, still not going to induce you. She ended up at Auburn Hospital where she told them at that point that she was 40 weeks pregnant. So so they were like, oh, well, at 40 weeks pregnant, you know, like, yep, probably more likely that they're going to be able to induce her, which they did. They induced her and she ended up giving her birth to baby Tegan at Auburn Hospital instead. And once she gave birth, they sort of realised that she wasn't as far along as they thought. But that happens, I guess. You don't maybe.
No, it doesn't. That doesn't happen. She had, as you said, she had a commitment to get to. What? No, no. I'm sorry. If as a mother, you want what's best for your baby.
Absolutely.
And if that is going to term, if that is whatever that is, you would think that would be your motivation, right?
Yeah.
Now she had too many lies, too many secrets, and too much going on to have the baby's best interest at heart.
Oh yeah, no, she was thinking about it was
herself.
more about the secrecy
and
of this
keeping
pregnancy.
up appearances.
Yeah.
Like her fucking family have done all her life.
Yes.
So I cannot even believe that the hospital went with this, but anyway, they did.
Yep.
And
surely they do a scan and they could have told.
I don't know. Like at that stage of pregnancy, like maybe she was measuring slightly bigger.
Yeah,
or
this
who
is
knows?
it. Yeah, who knows? Yep.
Anyway, they've done what they've done, and she's had the induction and had the baby just in the nick of time to go to the wedding 2 days later.
Well, she was in hospital. I think she went in for a night, and the next day was the wedding, and she was like, "I need to get out of here." She was urgently trying to leave.
So she tried to be discharged, and I think there was a bit of conjecture around that.
Yeah.
And she ended up actually just leaving hospital with baby Tegan without even speaking with the nurses. So there were several things that hadn't happened that should have happened in that time frame before she was discharged. One of those things is a Guthrie test that happens on every newborn in Australia.
Yep.
And that is a heel prick test that tests for lots of different genetic conditions. And it is just something that is stock standard done on, it's called like the heel prick test. It's done on every newborn baby. Mm-hmm. Those Guthrie cards are stored indefinitely, and they have in the past been able to inform police with DNA, like you can extract DNA from them. It's just a dry blood spot test. Extract DNA, but because baby Tegan never had that done, we don't have any DNA for her. Mm-hmm. Apparently the room that that Keli was in during her time at Auburn Hospital had like a fire escape attached to it. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Keli's story is that on that day she walked out of a man by the name of Andrew Norris, who was the father of this child, came up and was going to take responsibility for the child. The backstory of that is that he and his partner, Mel, were unable to have babies and were trying to have babies and were very, very excited to bring this baby into their care. And it was mutually agreed among the parties that they would take baby Tegan home. So Keli's story is that Andrew came up to her room, they walked down together with baby Tegan into the foyer of the hospital in the waiting area where Mel and Andrew's mother were in the waiting room waiting to take this baby home.
Yep.
There are several stories then about what happened. First story is that Andrew drove her and dropped her at Duncan Gillies' house.
Yep.
Another story is that she got a taxi.
Yep.
I think there was even a third. I can't remember whether there was a third or was it just the two. Anyway,
yeah.
She then says that she went back to Duncan's house because she needed to pick up her outfit for the wedding. She then went to her mum and dad's place, which is where she met Duncan, and they went on to the wedding, Duncan and the rest of the family, because they were all going together.
Where she wore a white suit.
It's giving total Meghan Markle vibes. Like, when she bloody walks out to, show baby Archie to the Queen, and she's literally given birth 24 hours before, and she's in a freaking white dress.
I hate they make them do that anyway. But yeah, just white.
Now, the other thing that's worth noting is Tegan was actually born by caesarean section.
Oh my God. I literally was going to say, I can't imagine if she even had a C-section. Holy cow. Oh, God.
So
couldn't
she
even
has
stand upright.
Yep. She has had major abdominal surgery
Now,
2 days
I did not
before.
realise that.
Yes.
Watching that video clip of her at the wedding, because there's obviously a videographer at the wedding. You can see the footage of her, which, confirms that she did go to this wedding. That's where she was on that date. You see her walking through. That's not a woman who's just given birth via C-section.
Mm-hmm. In a white suit.
Yeah.
She's, as you said, she's standing upright. Like all my friends who've had C-sections,
God.
you're sort of a bit hunched over.
I couldn't even walk down the corridor holding on to they've got the baby in the wheelie
bassinet
in the bassinet thing, right? I remember walking down to the nurse's station, which would have been probably 20 metres down from my room, trying to and I'm using the nurse was with me, so I was almost using the wheelie thing as a frame to walk with, but they weren't letting me just hold it because obviously it's not safe. But yeah, because you needed sort of help support to walk.
Well, that makes sense. All of your stabilizing core muscles have been cut in half.
Yeah. Even laying in bed and flat back, I was had the bed up because you just, I don't know, you want to hunch over.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, even I've had both of mine were natural deliveries.
Yeah.
And even then, I remember walking from the delivery suite to my room and thinking, oh my God, they're going to let me walk? I felt like I couldn't even walk.
Well, I couldn't even feel my legs. There was no walking. I was what are these things?
But let alone all the things that happen after birth and the fluids that are coming out.
Yeah.
No, and I'm not only talking from down there. I'm talking about milky sort of stuff. And a couple of days later, her milk would be at least starting to come in.
Because that's the thing. She's not taken a medication to stop that from occurring.
No. Because she could be really painful. Yeah, she was breastfeeding baby Tegan in hospital. So that would have stimulated the production of milk.
Yeah, that blows my mind. I had it in
just
my head.
Leaking from
everywhere.
Bad
enough thinking that she'd naturally deliver, but C-section, oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's photos of her at the wedding. As you said, there's video footage of her at the wedding. She's in a white suit with a white hat and she's having a grand old time.
Okay. That was 2 days after giving birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hear nothing else.
No. That's that
She's
baby.
kind of back to her, back to her normal life.
Yep.
Apparently, after each birth, she would have, so in terms of perceptions from her friends and family, she'd obviously developed a little bit of a system about how she would disappear for these 2 or 3 days to have these births without anyone knowing.
Yeah.
So her being gone for the couple of days, no one really questioned it. I guess she was an adult. Like, you know, what do you do?
Oh, I'm sorry, someone. I mean, she was 20 something.
She was 21 years old at the time. Yeah. You come and go when you're 21, don't you?
And she was still living with her parents, I believe.
Yeah, but maybe they thought she was at Duncan's house, and Duncan thought she was at home. I don't know that people would think to question that.
I find that sad.
It is sad.
Yeah.
It is really, really sad because, again, she was alone in that situation. She didn't ask or reach out for support from anyone.
No.
I just can't even think, like, okay, maybe you know your parents they are who they are. You think you'd have a close girlfriend or even your brother, I don't know, somebody who you think could support you through it.
Oh,
your boyfriend.
Well, yeah. Like, for all accounts, like, you know, why couldn't Duncan have been the father of this baby that she could have confessed to and said, we need to sort this out? Like, and that's the thing. You shouldn't feel alone in a pregnancy because there are two people it takes to make it.
Absolutely. To this day, we don't know who the father of Tegan is. So when I say she, Keli claims that it was Duncan again. So she claimed the first pregnancy was Duncan.
Oh, yeah.
The second pregnancy was, the first live birth was Duncan, and the second live birth was Duncan.
But then she says it's this Andrew
Tegan.
Norris.
Yes, but that comes later.
Yeah.
It's so her web of lies is so confusing and so hard to keep track of.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're going to fast forward now to February of 1999.
Yep.
Keli finds herself pregnant again. Mm-hmm. She's 25 weeks along at this point, and she flies into Queensland to attend an abortion clinic there that does late-term abortions.
Yes.
But when she gets there, they will not terminate the pregnancy because she's too far along.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think because
this pregnancy is viable at that point. As we were saying, it's 22, 24 weeks. We're not sure exactly which it is, but 25 is definitely viable.
You're beyond that.
Yeah, beyond that. So,
and look, there are medical reasons that people can terminate beyond that, but obviously this clinic wasn't sort of facilitating that.
And from what obviously they did their scans and things like that to find this pregnancy was viable for a 25-week pregnancy. And I mean, it's a whole debate,
said
isn't
apparently
it?
she rocked up to this clinic and said she was 13 weeks, and then they looked at her and it went, did a scan and were like, oh, you're actually like 25 weeks.
And once again, she's saying it's her first pregnancy, which, I mean, we've both had like 2 full-term pregnancies. With each one, your body, you know, the muscles and things like that change, and if people have had 3 and 4 pregnancies, you carry in different ways. You tend to like pop earlier and things like that. I mean,
for sure. Like, even as you said, I've only had 2 pregnancies.
Yeah.
With my first, I don't think you could even tell I was pregnant until I was 20 weeks.
Yeah, same.
But with my second, I remember at 14 weeks going, how about that?
Yeah, I was about 16 weeks and was like, I'm going to need that pregnancy belt thing on my jeans all of a sudden.
Totally.
Like, that's a lot earlier than last time.
Exactly.
Like, and everyone I talk to feels the same way, that, you know, particularly mums I know have had 3. By that 3rd, it's like, and I know of another particular mum just recently who was pregnant with her 4th, and I reckon at around about 10 weeks you could tell she was pregnant. Not that we were ever saying anything about it.
Because the baby wasn't coming out of her at the time.
But she's this is her 4th pregnancy. Yeah. We're all kind of like, we think maybe she'll be telling us soon. Like, that's exciting. But yeah, and eventually she told us. Like, you know, we're like, we kind of thought so.
There's no hiding it at that point. But this is the thing.
So yeah, this is her 3rd live pregnancy. You would think that her body would be showing this differently, but again, told no one. And yeah, I don't know.
It's bizarre.
It does, yeah.
In mid-1999, she gives birth for the 3rd time, and this time it's a boy. Mm-hmm. So in the court transcripts, they refer to this young boy as AJ. Again, she's done no prenatal care. So she's had the pregnancy confirmed very early on. We know this from her Medicare records and subsequent interviews with her GP.
So again, she's found out that she was pregnant early enough along, but didn't seek that late-term abortion?
For this pregnancy, I couldn't find the date that she attended the doctor. With the first pregnancy, she attended very early.
Yes.
With Tegan, she attended very early. When I say very early, like in the first 10 weeks.
Yep.
With this one, I actually couldn't find a date.
Work that out. I'm curious as to when she, again, like you would know earlier to me, like knowing what that felt like and all those sort of things. Because by 25 weeks, you're definitely feeling that baby move around.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
I don't know.
Yep. So she's been refused, obviously, the termination.
Yep.
The late term termination. So she has no choice but to proceed with the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Again, she's had no antenatal care. She has made no previous arrangements for adoption or anything like that. So she gives birth to this baby boy and again breastfeeds him, cares for him while they're in hospital and asks to see a social worker regarding she asks to see an adoption agency to sort of get that process going. Knowing with her first live birth that this can take a really long time, she was really keen to sort of get things moving along. This hospital had a policy that, so I think there was a social worker involved, not the one who eventually will come to, but who has made a statement in the notes basically saying that she was very emotional about this decision, but it was the right decision for her at the time, being that she was 24 years old. She wasn't in a long-term relationship. So by this stage, she had stopped her relationship with Duncan Gillies. In terms of timing, we're not quite sure whether they were together at the start of her pregnancy or whether they'd broken up just beforehand. It has also been proven that Duncan is not the father of AJ. So they know who the father of AJ is. Again, that's been proven by DNA and paternity testing, and it's not Duncan Gillies. So he's been with her for a really long time. She's fallen pregnant 3 times throughout the course of their relationship, and he's not fathered one of them.
No. But he's definitely been having sexual relationships with her that...
She admits it and he admits it, as in, like, there's no conjecture of that. They both say they were actively, like, engaging in sexual activity that could have resulted in a pregnancy.
But also him touching her body in a way and seeing her body that would you not realise or say something?
It's weird.
It's so weird.
Really, really weird.
Yeah.
So with this adoption agency, the lady who was in charge of this process for this baby, she tries so hard to get a straight story out of Keli and is getting nothing, getting nowhere. In the end, she actually had to hunt down Duncan Gillies, who is the name, again, that that Keli gave to the adoption agency as being the father of this baby. She told the adoption agency worker that he was a rugby player, and she hunted around. Google. I don't even know if Google searched
Google
whatever she
around.
did. I think maybe just. But whatever she did, she found him at a certain rugby club and wrote him a letter through the club, and eventually it got to him. He then contacted the adoption agency and went, I know nothing about this. What's going on? And this kind of triggered a bit of a,
what's going on
what's
here?
actually happening here? So she decided to contact DOCS, so the Department of Child Services, and they put a child protection worker on the case to just do an investigation, a bit of a welfare type of situation, and they assigned a man by the name of John Borovnik. Now, tell me what you think about him. We've seen he's in the Exposed documentary. He's interviewed. What are your thoughts about him?
I find him very interesting.
In what way?
So I've had a little bit to do with child protection workers, and it's hit and miss of the kind of commitment I think they have of they're tied by a lot of legal restraints and what they can and can't do in situations. I find them interesting people generally. This guy, to me, became quite obsessed with this. And I get it to a degree of this is a very fascinating case of someone who's very unusual, but he's getting Tegan's name tattooed on him. Yeah,
that's the bit that got me. So when he's being interviewed, I think he seems like a really lovely person, as in you can tell he cares, right? You can.
Yeah. But to an extent that I find generally speaking, child protection workers, they really keep themselves quite removed.
You'd have to.
And I respect that, because I think you'd become quite I don't know, callous. It maybe, I don't know, it
Jaded.
would kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could ever do that work.
No,
No
never.
disrespect whatsoever.
Hats off to them.
Absolutely. But this guy goes the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
And I find that then really hard because I want more passion from these people sometimes. But he's gone too far.
Yeah. The fact that he had her name tattooed
Yeah.
on him, that really like...
It really, it kind of just, it does.
Did it give you the ick?
It did.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, you've gone too far. But
Yeah.
thank goodness for him
Well,
because...
yeah.
You don't think so?
Again, I just think I think he's taken it too far, but I know that what he's discovered, and I think it needed to be discovered. Absolutely.
Yeah, because
yes.
otherwise we wouldn't even know that Tegan was a missing person. So what
Yeah.
he's put together is, so he's assisting the adoption agency
Mm-hmm.
from a child protection standpoint. He's assisting them facilitate all of this.
Yeah.
And he interviews and has a chat with Keli, and she tells him that this is her first pregnancy. To his credit,
Yeah.
he then goes and looks up previous history and they find that first adoption.
Well, I think it was one hospital they rang something about. He rang and said he wanted to find out about her 96 pregnancy, and they went, "Oh no, you mean 95?"
That's right.
And then he went, "What do you mean 95?" No, she was there in 96, which is when she gave birth to Tegan.
Yep.
And they went, "Oh, yeah, no, she's also had a pregnancy in 95," and that was when it kind of all went.
And they're like, hold on a
Hold on,
minute, where's this
another
other
one?
baby?
Yeah.
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 And so he's then said to Keli, look, where is this baby? Like, what have you, like, where is she?
Yeah.
And she tells him the cock and bull story, in my opinion, about this Andrew Norris. I don't even know what to call him yet.
Well, originally in her first interview, she calls him Andrew Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was her first interview with the police, not with
Not with
John.
him even. But so I'm assuming she said Morris to him as well at that point. I don't know.
Oh, who the hell knows? She's given him a
knows?
name.
Yep.
And he can't find anything to do with this. And he says to Keli, if you can't show me or give me an address or find me this child, I have no choice but to report her as a missing person to the police. And Keli just kind of lets that happen.
Well, that's what you've got to do.
If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to
that's
do.
what happened. She really sticks to that of like, well,
Yep.
you know, that's fine because I've told you, well, in her words, you know, well, I've told you everything I can tell you, and what else do you want me to? What else do you want me to tell you? This is, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
She's so interesting.
So interesting. In December of 2000, Keli's pregnant again. This time to a new boyfriend.
To a boyfriend, and that they're engaged to
Yes.
get married. She's 24? 26?
Yep.
Yep. 26 years of age. They're engaged. They're in a relationship, a long-term relationship. That's the father of this child. It's the only person she's sleeping with.
Yep.
You know, that she's settled.
Yeah.
She's in a you know, working a job that she's loving.
Have you seen what her mum and dad's reaction to this? So this is the first pregnancy she's like telling
Told
people
anyone
about.
Yeah.
Did you see what her mum and dad's reaction to this pregnancy was?
No.
Oh, well, you're not married. Like,
Oh.
yeah. So they weren't unhappy,
So
but
they
weren't
wanted
happy.
They wanted the wedding first.
Yeah, they wanted it to look legit because appearances matter.
Oh God, that poor girl. I really.
What Keli goes on to say though is that upon the birth of this child, who is a girl,
Yeah.
that, you know, she brought so much joy and love into their family, and everybody loves her, and it made her realize that, you know, everything's okay. You know, everything works out the way it's meant to work out in the end.
Yeah.
The police don't. So the report in 1999 by John Borovnik, the docks worker, that kind of goes nowhere for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So it's not until February of 2001 that they start the investigation into Tegan's disappearance. When I say they, I mean the police,
Yeah.
New South Wales Police. Unfortunately, this is actually handed to Manly Police Station to handle in the first instance. And that is the police station that Keli's dad worked at and had this very big presence and reputation in.
Yeah. They were also going through a whole lot of stuff to do with some corrupt police officers. There was
Wasn't it like half of the people
they were
there
go-
were like terminated and whatever because it was like full of corruption and they were taking,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother story.
Oh, yeah. So this goes straight to a cop at Manly, and it's questionable whether or not loyalty to...
He knew. He worked with Rob.
Yeah.
Rob
So
Lane.
whether that kind of, went, oh, I don't know if I want to work on that, like kind of thing may have happened.
I don't know about that because the way that, like, you can see the interview tapes with him, and I think he just takes it really lightly.
Yeah.
I think they're investigating the disappearance of a child, and he just kind of like, I mean, I get you're gathering information at the start. He knows nothing. So, okay,
No.
you're not going to be like hard and fast straight on. But in this interview, she says that Andrew Morris, with an M for Mary, is the father of the child, and she tells the story about handing baby Tegan over in the hospital foyer.
It's kind of taken at face value that that's what happened, and they almost sort of go, okay.
And they're like, oh, well, we just need to find this Andrew Morris guy and it'll all be good.
Yeah.
We can close the case.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
So do you think too, like maybe there was a bit of an attitude of this is a brand new baby that no one knew her, no one knew she existed. And I wonder whether there's a little bit of a layer of, for some people, like if you don't know the person, you don't know, you're removed from it. There's no connection of like it's not a missing person because they weren't a person. Do you know what I mean?
I totally get that because my thing is, and even when I was explaining to Peter this case last night, and this was definitely a thought that I have not seen addressed anywhere. There was never a birth certificate filed for Tegan Lane.
Yep.
So does she exist
Does
in
she
the
actually
eyes of
exist?
the law? But what I can't understand is how can you have a baby in a hospital and then not submit the birth certificate without it being followed up by the Registry of Births, Deaths and Marriages or followed up by but the hospital. I don't know who has responsibility in that jurisdiction, but surely, because I know a friend of mine who had a baby and she just kind of like in the throes of it forgot to like that she filled it out, just hadn't posted it off yet.
Yeah.
And she actually got a letter to say you must register this baby's birth
They will fine
within
you.
12 weeks or whatever of birth.
Yeah.
Or
My
5
understanding
weeks
is
or
that
whatever
the hospital submit whatever to
birth,
like
deaths
birth
and
marriages,
Yep.
and then the paperwork has to come from you to marry that up. So they sort of have this open case kind of thing.
So did no one follow that up with baby Tegan?
Yeah, mustn't have. Yeah, but I guess back in the 90s, see, I mean, I go back to this is a long time before. Like my dad's birth certificate is fucked up. Like there's been name changes on that he can actually pull out pieces of paper basically with different names on it. There's weird stuff that's gone on in the past in birth, deaths and marriages, and whether or not computers would only really new computer systems would have been new to it. I don't know whether or not it's just got lost in the system.
It must have
Or
because
what?
it has never been followed up.
No.
So we've got a baby who's been born that has no birth certificate and therefore no record.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing though, the only record that we know she existed and that she was born is because there are hospital notes.
Yeah.
And because Keli named her.
Yeah.
Then her name is on all of that all of the hospital notes and documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So nothing much comes of that after the interview.
No.
After that first interview. On the 20th of June in 2005, an inquest into Tegan's disappearance and suspected death commences. Now, this inquest is interesting and I think at the end of the day, it ended where it needed to end, but there was a lot of in and out, back and forth, a lot of not quite truths, a lot of things that were not investigated properly that were being presented. Not every single person who had involvement in the case was interviewed or brought to the court for the inquest.
Yep.
I think it was somewhat lacking in certain respects. However, the conclusion of the inquest was that on the balance of probability, baby Tegan was dead and a homicide investigation needed to be entered into by New South Wales Police.
I struggle with that.
Why?
Where's the evidence that she's dead?
Where is she?
That's where I fully agree with the coroner concluding that there needs to be an investigation. 100% and a proper full investigation. But I just can't see how you can conclude that she's dead when you don't know.
No, okay. I disagree.
I don't think there's enough evidence to prove it. I'm not saying she's not dead.
I think on the balance of probability, she is dead.
I don't disagree. But there's reasonable doubt.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Criminally,
Yeah.
absolutely there is reasonable doubt.
So what's the threshold of a coroner's court saying she's dead?
No, it is on the balance of probability for a coronial inquest. So I fully agree with the fact that on the balance of probability, this child is dead. I disagree that it is beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal court that she is dead, because there is no proof either way.
I guess that's where, so if that's what the threshold is, then okay. Because this is where I get really lost of how to comprehend this outcome of all this.
Because there are so many lies. There's so much to unpick. And you can choose to believe that, which will lead you to that conclusion. Or you can choose to believe the other side of things, which will lead you to a completely different conclusion.
Or there can just be a whole other story going on here completely, and that could be truth too. And
absolutely.
I just really struggle. I struggle with that being the coroner's outcome. I do. And I understand I don't know if I can come at it, because I just don't feel like there's enough. I feel as though there isn't enough evidence to suggest that can be the only outcome.
So what the coroner said was that due to the constraints of time around needing to get to this wedding, which she had to get to because she had to save face and appearances were everything, he completely acknowledged that. He said she was caught in a basically in a zone or in
wall.
Exactly. She was backed against a wall. She had nothing else to do.
I do agree with that. So I guess it's that threshold of what it is that
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll bend.
You don't need to bend. You can think what you want to think, but I reckon the coroner nailed it.
Okay.
I think he got it right.
Yeah. I mean, 100% more investigation needed to happen to this. Like absolutely. It's just whether categorically she's dead. I don't know.
I think the term that he used is most likely dead.
Right. Okay. That I can come out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
In December of so in February of 2026, at the conclusion of the inquest, it's the matter is referred over to the unsolved homicide squad, so the cold case unit essentially.
Yeah.
And this is when...
Can we just go back to one other bit? Just before, like when they interviewed her, just before it was going to go to the coroner, there's an interview that it's on tape of her and she's basically putting it to her one final time, like, I need more information on this, Keli, otherwise it's going to be going to the coroner, which makes it public.
Oh, yeah.
And her reaction to that I find really fascinating. Like, she's so, like, just... They say to her, did you kill your baby? And she's like, no, I did not do that. Like, no, like, and then when they say to her, all right, well, if you can't give me any more information, they really give her every opportunity to come clean and say more. And in a very good way. Like, they were not blaming her on anything. They were like, come on, you can just tell us what happened. Give us the names of people, tell us more information. And then we don't have to go down that path. We can just keep investigating kind of thing. But they were at a crossroads of like, we've got nothing else other than your lies. Tell us the truth sort of stuff and we can keep moving, or we've got to go to the coroner's report and make this something else. And she just, she's like, no, you can't make this public. I don't want people knowing, like, you can't do that to me. Like, it was all about the perception again.
And she actually says in that as well, she's like, what will my mum and dad think?
Yeah, immediately it's what will mum and dad think. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, her mum and dad, oh my God, we haven't even gotten close to them yet. Oh God, no. Fuck. So... Yeah, so we're now at a point where she's being interviewed again by the police. This is her second interview. And is she pregnant at this time?
Or had she just had the baby?
Just had the baby, maybe.
So I think she's, got another baby.
Yeah, and she was about to get married.
Yeah.
And she actually, by this stage as well, they'd wiretapped her phone and they'd put listening devices in her car and in her house.
Yeah.
And she rings a friend. So she must have had the baby, because she rings a friend and says, can you look after my baby? I've got to go to a dress fitting. But it turned out she actually was going to be interviewed by the police about the homicide of...
She didn't tell anybody about any of this still going on. She's
nobody knows.
Still got this other life sort of stuff that she lives her life, and then, I've got to deal with this stuff in the background that she's not telling anyone about.
No.
That's fascinating.
So during the phone taps, I found that really, really interesting the conversations between Keli and her mum on those phone taps, because her mum is absolutely questioning how this could happen. She genuinely says that she didn't know anything about her daughter, who was living in her home, being pregnant freaking 5 times at this point.
Yeah.
She
even says something like along the lines of, so you're saying like some single bloke or some guy wanted to raise the baby? Like, that just doesn't make sense, Keli. Like, she's very cold.
Oh, she's a very interesting person.
I mean, she has nothing to do with this. Like,
no,
she's not
absolutely.
No, by
she's
no
not
means.
culpable.
However, in the situation, but she's definitely played a role in raising Keli in a certain way.
Yeah.
And
Keli obviously felt she couldn't go to her parents and go, I'm in this really dreadful situation.
Yeah.
Help.
Yep.
You know, I need some support.
I get that by having seen the bits of pieces of who she is. And I don't know her at all, but I don't think you'd feel comfortable going and talking to her about anything emotional. That's for damn sure.
No, she's very hard line.
Oh, yeah.
And look, the dad is like, he's a bit goofy or something. Like, he's a bit of an interesting character in and of himself.
Yeah.
And I can imagine he just says what his wife says. Like, he's obviously towing the party line there. They are adamant that they knew nothing about these pregnancies. But what I find interesting in these phone taps between Keli and Sandra is Keli will repeat every question that is asked of her, and it's like she has to formulate an answer, so she repeats the question. So, for example, her mum's like, well, what happened to the baby? And she goes, what? What happened to the baby? Oh, well, I gave it to Andrew. And I found that, like, in these phone taps, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, right.
She's biding her time. She's giving herself a time to
think about her answer.
Okay, what was my lie?
Yeah.
Because if it was the truth, it would just roll off the tongue. It would, you don't have to think about the truth.
Yeah.
But she has to think about the stories that she's told and the names that she's given and make sure she gets ends and ends not mixed up.
She almost doesn't think about the story that she's told. She just tells a new lie every time. And I feel like she doesn't have this understanding of that it needs to make sequential sense. Like, otherwise people won't believe you, because she doesn't seem to worry about that in her lies.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really
so true.
fascinating.
It's so true. This is going back to the inquest, but I found this really interesting little bit of information that came up. So during the inquest, there were hundreds probably of thousands of pieces of paper of documentation that the coroner went through. And part of that was the counsel assisting and the police, in their brief of evidence, searched every school in Australia for Tegan, because by this stage she would have been school-aged.
Yeah.
Now, they looked for females born on the 12th of September or thereabouts. I think they gave days either side.
Yeah.
They found a girl by the name of Tegan Chapman with the same date of birth. Her birth certificate listed an Alan Norris as the father.
Yep.
And so they thought, oh, my God, you beauty, we found her. We've actually found her. DNA testing proved it wasn't her.
Yeah, but wow, coincidence.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, look, I think, things are exhaustive in that respect. They've then gone to trial, basically.
Yep.
So the police have done everything in their power to try and find Tegan, to try and find Andrew Norris Morris, and for somebody to come forward.
Yeah. And it was very public, once it hit the media and stuff too, that, I mean, if anyone happened to know someone who fit this category, someone would have nudged them to step forward if they were in Australia.
And if you were a decent human being and you saw that somebody you knew who was the biological mother of your child was potentially going to end up in prison because you're hiding for some unknown reason. Like, there's no reson for him to hide. He's done nothing wrong.
No, he's the father of the child. He's biologically, he's legally allowed to have this baby. He didn't register the birth. So there'd be a few things he could be I guess, held accountable for. But they're nothing compared to years in prison.
And I'm sure they'd all be pardoned if they found Tegan and thank God we found her.
Exactly. There'd be a few things that he would have needed to check boxes on and that he hasn't, that they haven't done. And that's where that story just sort of starts to get a bit.
It really does.
Did it really happen?
And like, this is the thing that gets me.
Yeah.
This is what makes me think personally that Tegan is not alive. She's never been registered, had a birth registered. Now, in Australia, it is really difficult to do anything without a birth certificate these days. You cannot open a bank account. No. You cannot get a job. You cannot get a passport. You cannot register a child to school.
And Medicare. There's nothing's been nothing on Medicare's been registered.
And you can't tell me that a child in their entire life does not need to at least go to the doctor 20 times probably through a childhood. If that's just a standard thing. Exactly, let alone once.
Yeah.
So either Andrew Norris Morris is an incredibly neglectful father,
or the child was taken overseas.
That's possible because apparently in 1996, a very early infant, so I think if you were under 3 months of age, you could actually travel out of the country without a passport.
Yeah, yeah. So that is certainly a possibility.
So records were checked though, and I don't think they ever found that an Andrew Norris Morris had left the country within that 3 month period.
That's again if the name's correct.
That's exactly right.
So we can't rule out entirely that was possible at the time.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is by the name Keli gave.
Yes, by that name,
nobody left the country.
But
by that name.
Yeah.
So, okay, where's
the story's
Tegan?
Definitely not true. I think there's elements of truth. Potentially the guy's name was Andrew, but not Norris or Morris.
So at the end of that exposed documentary, that comes out essentially. Keli basically says, because Caro by this stage is frustrated.
Wouldn't you be?
You're in a web of these lies. Yeah. Nobody knows what's truth, what's not, what's half lies, what's not.
That's what really is frustrating about this is everyone's trying to help her.
She's the one reaching out to get help from these people.
And people are actually trying super hard to help her out here. And she's not helping herself.
No.
Because then to sit in that interview and finally admit that, well, maybe I've got his surname wrong. Well, fuck me. We're talking, 13, 14 years down the track, Keli. Come on.
And you've been adamant that it's definitely Andrew Norris. Definitely. And then at the last post, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe it wasn't. His name was Andrew, but maybe it wasn't Norris.
Fucking hell.
Are you fucking kidding me? How much money and time and resource and energy and how many lives have been affected by this?
Definitely.
The homicide detective investigating this, she ended up quitting the force after this due to PTSD from this case. Now, the previous case to this that she investigated was the rape and murder of a 3-year-old boy. And that didn't break her.
That didn't break her.
This broke her.
This is the one that broke her. Yeah.
Now, I get sometimes it's layer upon layer and the straw that breaks the camel's back.
But she's not the only one who says the same thing.
The justice in the case, yes.
He was up for retirement age, but again, he was like, I'm not doing any more criminal cases.
I cannot do another criminal case.
After that, I'm done. So many people have been broken by this.
Yeah.
And I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, she just is not helping herself.
No, she's not. She was up for parole on the 12th of May this year. In 2024.
Yep.
But due to the new no body, no parole laws in New South Wales, which were actually brought about for the Lynn Dawson case, they
already existed, but they were able to be used discretionally.
Oh,
so
okay.
This is where I get I have a little bit of an issue with this.
Yeah.
So discretionally, it could have been used at any point. Okay. You could say that a parole board have the right to say, you've not shown us a body, there's enough evidence to suggest you know where it is, so therefore you don't get parole. But now the law is there's no question about it. If there's no body, you don't get parole. There's no if buts about it. So that law could still exist and still be used against Chris Dawson without it being compulsory.
So why did they do that? Because
they basically, I think they'd fucked up so much that basically the government were like, oh yeah, we're shutting this down. We're going to do something about this. And so I honestly do agree with the judge in the case has written letters to the government about it,
yes,
trying to
have it reversed. Yeah.
Because I agree with him fully on it.
Yeah.
At the time when I heard about this no body no parole law in relation to Chris Dawson, I'm like, yeah, that needs to be in place. But now it's been explained to me how legally it works. It could have already been used. It didn't have to be.
That's really frustrating because
yes.
I think in this case, you know, as I've said already, I think she's not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I personally think that I don't think she actively murdered baby Tegan. My theory is that she left the hospital. She was bound by the time frame by which she needed to get to this wedding, which to her, again, appearances were everything. She had to get there. I think she's left baby Tegan somewhere.
Same.
And she's passed away in the course of events. I mean, she was a bloody 2-day-old baby who they need so much active care.
Yeah.
She's died and has obviously been hidden somewhere that
she hasn't been found.
She hasn't been found.
Yeah.
And but we don't know that.
No. And I think in the court process, in the trial, I honest to God don't know how they came to that conclusion that there was not enough, that wasn't reasonable doubt, and they've, convicted her because the prosecution did not do the their full job of proving that Tegan's dead. And that's where I sort of query that. I feel like the coroner saying she's dead gives that weight to say that, in that court hearing that, oh, well, she's dead, so therefore there is a body somewhere. And that's where I find that link between those two. You haven't proven that.
No.
And that's where I find that really hard to differentiate those two. I hear what you're saying around the different thresholds of like a coroner to say it.
Yeah.
But then I feel like it impacts a jury of your regular Joe Blows of going, well, the coroner says she's dead, so there she's dead. But we have no evidence of that.
The other thing that comes into play in a trial is there's like a lot of game playing that goes on. There were witnesses subbed in and out.
Yeah.
So people that the jury could have heard from that may have swayed them in a certain way or given more weight to an argument were not able to be brought before the jury.
Yep.
And so I think there's a lot around that too. My God, we could literally talk about this for days because there is so much to it.
I mean, the judge really tried to give the defence a lot of times to, like, because another part of this was that in her trial, they couldn't, because they're completely unrelated. The other pregnancies are completely unrelated to Tegan and her missing.
Good
right?
point. Yep.
So they were not to be brought up. So what did the prosecution do?
Mark Tedeschi,
he basically brought forward more charges on her, these 3 perjury charges, which, look, they're legit. She did perjure herself. She absolutely lied 100%.
Lied under
There's
oath.
no question about that. And the defence, the defence's sort of go to Keli on this was, look, you did. We're not going to lie about it. We're going to fight all of it. We'll just fight the lot.
Yep.
The simple fact of the matter is, very typically in these sorts of things, obviously a perjury charge is far less than a murder charge.
Yeah.
And so you want to focus on the murder, right, to be able to get a result from that. Many, many, many times what they'll do is say, look, let's forget the little perjury charges and focus on the murder charge. And the judge was really pushing for the defence to put a motion forward and say, can we remove the perjury charges?
I think he even said, I was very explicit in saying, would you like to have these charges tabled? And they were like, no, it's fine.
No, we're just going to go for it.
And he was like, are you sure?
He really, he's admitted to this day
what was going to happen.
that if he had been asked to remove them, he would have.
Yes.
And that would have meant that none of the stuff about the other babies would have been admissible. Because those perjury charges remained, the jury got the whole salacious story of previous pregnancies.
Of her terminations, of her promiscuity. I don't even
Which
know I don't know how promiscuity even comes into this.
This is
because
it.
That has literally nothing to do with the fact that she's up for a murder charge against a child she's delivered. I
have a real issue with that. That I feel like she was actually convicted of being promiscuous.
Like being a slut.
Instead of the murder of a baby.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that.
But the evidence was not there to actually convict her. I'm not saying that I don't think she did or didn't murder Tegan.
So you think Tegan's dead?
don't know.
I think she's dead.
I very much probably if I lean slightly that way. Look, her story about Andrew Norris and that there was Mel and his mum sitting in the foyer.
The mum bit, even the Mel
such
bit gets
bullshit.
me.
I
Mel,
don't
the girlfriend.
believe.
Oh yeah, I'll just take on this other woman's child. No worries.
Yeah.
You cheated on me, but cool.
But
I'll
let's raise the child from that.
I think the other thing that sits uncomfortably with me, and look, this is just the nature of society, I suppose, is that people would rather believe that Keli killed her baby than that the dad would want to take responsibility for that baby without the mother being involved, without the biological mother being involved.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still think Tegan's dead.
I cannot rule out that she didn't hand the baby to someone.
But then where is she?
Absolutely. Because there's a moment where I think it's Caro actually asks her, well, okay, so who did you pass the baby to? You know, like, tell me more about this Andrew person or whatever. And she goes, I don't have to tell you any more than what I've told you. Like, she gets very defensive, and it's almost like this break in it, in that you kind of go, there's someone she passed it to, but she's not going to change. Like, she's not going to tell you who it was.
See, I interpreted that so differently. I thought when I saw that that she was like, I've made up this story and I'm within my parameters and I can't think outside of it. So don't ask me any more questions. This is my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a theory of that she's walked out through that fire escape door and potentially gone near the dumpsters at the back of the hospital there and has left the baby there. Yeah. I don't think she actually, like, say, you know, slit a baby's throat.
No, I fully agree with that.
I cannot have someone suggest that. No. I don't think she has physically murdered the child.
She's like actively murdered the child.
I think she's left it somewhere, as you said. Yeah. I really do. And look, I think that's a plausible potential story of what's gone on. Mm-hmm. But I also, probably slightly less than, could also think that there's someone who has said, I'll sort the baby out for you, and has taken the baby from her. I can't, and whether that's, again, got on a plane and gone overseas.
And then they've somehow been able to obtain a birth certificate for the child somewhere along the way.
Just because I can't rule it out entirely, there's no evidence to suggest that
I'm with
that's
you on
where
that.
I can't go, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I probably err on the side more of, like, her putting the baby somewhere.
You know, we are law-abiding citizens, so we don't know how you would illicitly obtain a birth certificate, but there's probably ways that you could potentially do that. And then in that, you would completely change their name. You could even change their date of birth and nobody would actually know. So, look, I get that's possible. Is that likely? I don't think so.
It's not as likely. Like, I will absolutely, agree with that. Yeah. But I just think that her being convicted, I find really challenging. I don't think there was the evidence. It was not beyond a reasonable doubt that she murdered a baby and deserved to be in jail. Yeah. Well, for 18 years is what she was convicted of. Yeah. And now it will most likely be that full 18 years with no parole due to the fact there's no body.
Well, so from the time she was up for parole until her full sentence was like 4.5 years or 4 years, 7 months, something like that. Yeah. So she will have to serve that extra 4 years and 7 months.
Unless things change in the meantime of that law. And it would
she's got what she got now, 3.5 years left of her sentence.
Well, I mean, any time you can get off it, you would, wouldn't you? I mean, if it's
her daughter, who she was raising, is now a teenager. You know, that's the time in your life when you need your mum.
Yeah, and I struggle with that of, like, so there was someone who said that these no parole laws were brought into place. I think it might have been the judge saying they were brought into place to support the family of victims, right? And so, to give them closure and things like that this was how things would work. The family of Tegan is Keli. So they're punishing her twice over, right? They're not giving her the opportunity to be a mother to the daughter that she did want and has, but they're also punishing her, like, for potentially something she didn't do. I don't know. I think we could go around about in circles on this for days. But do you think we should leave it there? Have you got anything else you wanted to add? Just trying to think if there's anything else, but because it just is endless.
It is absolutely endless.
Yeah. I mean, she's been looked at by psychologists and etc. and many different people have got different opinions on her psychological makeup.
As I said, you can find people to support whatever theory you may have.
Absolutely.
Dr. Xanthi Mallet was interviewed in relation to this this case, and she'll come up in a lot of the cases we're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah.
But one of the quotes she said is, just because you're a liar doesn't mean you're a murderess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that sums up, Keli to an absolute T.
Absolutely.
Just really quickly, I went to Reddit. Fuck only knows why, but you're scraping the bottom of the barrel for research when you go to Reddit. But somebody with the handle The Illuminary has summed up my thoughts and feelings so eloquently, so I'm just going to read it to you.
Yeah.
I don't believe the prosecution proved Keli murdered Tegan beyond a reasonable doubt to be legally convicted, but I also can't think of any other plausible explanation of what happened to Tegan, considering her fuck ton of lies and a continued inability to prove her side of the story.
Yeah.
Totally. That's literally how I feel.
Yep.
So thanks, Reddit.
Yes. No, spot on. Yep. Fuck ton of lies. Yep.
Fuck ton of lies.
Look, I think she just needs to come clean.
Yep.
I tell the truth. It's really frustrating.
It is. And we all want to know for our own sanity.
I mean, I have to also just sort of state, as much as the jury, I think the jury got it wrong, 100%.
Yep.
They did take 8 days to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And it ended up being 11-1. And the judge made the call that they would go with majority rule.
Yeah, as opposed to unanimous.
And even though to this day he has come out and said that he doesn't think that should have gone that way.
Yeah.
So,
but he also has his job is to get the proceeding completed.
That was not his job. He wasn't to do that in that situation. So he was very good at what at his job, really. He did a good job.
But,
oh, my God.
All right. Let's leave it there because, as I said, we could talk about this for days. Please join us on next week's episode. We're going to be covering the Jinx. It's a huge one.
It's a big one.
Yeah. We've got a lot of research to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so watching that Netflix show again. Can't wait.
Let's do it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Two Crime Besties. Don't forget to, follow us over on the socials.
Yeah.
Commenting, following, liking. We absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And if you want to buy us a coffee, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/Two Crime Besties.
All the links down below. You'll find all those in the show notes. Thank you, everyone. Stay curious, Crime Besties.
Bye.